I have a problem with other trans creators on this platform who tell half-truths, if not outright lies. There are certain creators who I used to look up to and respect. I used to want to work with them. Blair White, for example, is someone I've tried to work with in the past. She is staunchly anti-trans in the military. I was in the military. That's a long story. So it would have been wise for her to work with me. Her opinions come from a personal bias instead of facts and real-life experiences. Another example would be Buck Angel. Numerous times he has said trans kids don't exist. This is a bullshit lie. There would be no such thing as trans adults if trans children didn't exist, because you were born transsexual. I was a trans child. I am a product of wait and see. I was allowed to socially transition, meaning I was allowed to change my name, pronouns, cut my hair, change my clothes, and live my life as a boy. That was fine with my mom, but my mom was in therapy. I was in therapy. We were doing things the right way. Despite my begging and pleading for drugs and surgery, my mom wouldn't let me. I resented her for the longest time because I wasn't old enough to understand why I wasn't allowed to have drugs or surgery. Kids can't consent to the medical part of this. They just can't. But you have to allow kids to socially transition. You have to let them explore their identity. You don't have to support the identity. You don't have to validate the identity. But you need to support and validate your kid. Trans is more than just an identity. It's a lifelong medical and mental health condition. This isn't something that goes away. You don't just grow out of it. That isn't how this works. If a kid detransitions after a social transition, so what? Who cares? At least they weren't drugged or surgically altered. Trans children exist, and pretending they don't is detrimental to our children. Do you want to know what these trans influencers won't tell you about detransitioners? Detransitioners decide to detransition because they were never trans to begin with. That is why they detransition. It is not for any other reason than they were never trans in the first place, which is why self-ID has become such a giant problem. We can't blanket validate every single person as trans who claims to be trans. There has to be therapeutic intervention. Buck has also said there are no good phalloplasty surgeons out there. This is a bullshit fucking lie. My phalloplasty surgeon was phenomenal. I have had 0 complications since my first phallo surgery in 2021. I don't regret my phallo at all either. It did in fact save my life, and I would be dead if it would not have happened. I have problems with even more creators. I won't name names or go into every reason because we would be here for a long time, but these creators aren't giving you based opinions from a middle ground perspective. What's even worse is these creators are getting paid to say what they say. They have become sellouts preaching certain narratives instead of telling the truth. It bothers the hell out of me how they call people trans who aren't actually trans. That doesn't help us. They regurgitate the same tired TikToks and people from TikTok. They lack substance in their podcasts. Everything they do is for shock value, clicks, and views. They don't want to have real conversations from the center aisle. I have noticed most big-time LGBT creators never tell the full story of when something goes down, such as a teacher being fired. They don't tell you the entire story with the full context. We have to be able to talk about these things in a non-hysterical way. We have to be able to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, which is not happening. I've been transitioning for 21 years, and the community I helped create has been overtaken by a bunch of kids with mental illness, not sex dysphoria. The community I used to know and love has been bastardized. Transsexual men, such as myself, have been shunned and pushed out of the spaces we created, simply for wanting to reclaim our spaces and free them from kids who need to get off the internet and get therapy. The more I try to speak up, the more my voice is silenced. My social media is shadow banned. All of it. My reach is being suppressed. I'm based and from a true independent center-right perspective. Yet all of these big influencers have huge bases but offer nothing of real substance. I think the situation speaks for itself. It's safe to say I'm tired of the way things are and it's time for them to change. It's time for people to listen to me and let me speak for myself instead of trying to speak for me. These influencers are fake. They're just fake. They're plastics and mean girls. If you don't bend the knee to their narrative, they don't want anything to do with you. There is no trans community anymore. I don't want to be like all of them and regurgitate the same information over and over, so I'm going to do things different around here. I want to change the landscape of trans content on YouTube. These influencers have destroyed everything. So that's why I really don't like most other trans influencers.